This is Africa News, bringing you the headlines on the continent today. Progress or bowing to international pressure. Uganda's leader refuses to ratify a bill calling for life imprisonment for homosexuals, but some activists say President Museveni's language is cause for concern. Evidence of the use of child soldiers and mass atrocities committed by both sides in South Sudan. The UN deems the sectarian conflict a horrifying human rights disaster. And Madagascar officially declares a new president-elect. A 55-year-old ex-finance minister takes the reins of the Indian Ocean island with over 53% of the votes. Hello there and welcome. Uganda's leader, Yoweri Museveni, has opposed an anti-gay bill passed by lawmakers that calls for life imprisonment for homosexuals. President Museveni's opposition to the bill comes despite pressure from evangelicals as well as lawmakers from his own party. But according to excerpts of a letter to the Speaker of Parliament, the president characterises homosexuals as abnormal people who need rehabilitation. Julia Seeger reports.
The Ugandan anti-gay law blocked. On Friday, Yoweri Museveni refused to approve a bill to toughen punishments for homosexuals. He explained his decision in a letter to Parliament published on the Daily Monitor's website.
Homosexuals are sick people, but that doesn't mean they should be imprisoned for life or executed. There are better ways to treat their sickness. I do not approve of homosexuality, but I believe that these people have a right to exist.
The bill was passed last month by Parliament. It calls for life imprisonment for homosexual acts and makes it a crime not to report gay people. The private member's bill originally proposed the death penalty for some offences, but the clause was later dropped.
Thank the Speaker of Parliament for the courage and providing leadership to defend the children of Uganda and the cause for humanity.
The controversial law sparked public outcry in the US and the EU. Last month, Germany even suspended its financial aid to the country in protest of the law. The president insists, however, he did not back down in the face of international condemnation. The bill is blocked for now, but homophobia is still widespread in Uganda. In 2011, David Kato, a prominent gay rights activist, was bludgeoned to death at his home after a newspaper released his personal information.
Well, Frank Mugisha is a prominent Ugandan gay activist. He's in Kampala for us. Frank, is the president's refusal to approve this controversial bill progress, in your opinion?
For me, I don't see that as progress because the language used is very disturbing in this letter. If this letter is very authentic, written by the President of the Speaker of Parliament, then I do not really like the language that he has used to describe homosexuals as abnormal people, because these kind of statements are going to fuel a lot of homophobia within Ugandans. However, part of what I welcome is that he hasn't, bowed down to pressure from Christian groups and evangelical groups. Also, he has shown that he will not sign a document into was passed by Parliament without following the proper guidelines of Parliament.
So a mixed response there from you, Frank. What needs to be done? What does President Museveni need to do, in your opinion, to move things forward?
What the president needs to do is, first of all, to come up with a very clear position on the bill itself. And also, what the president needs to do is to use the language of homosexuals being normal people like any other Ugandans and a minority group that needs protection by the state and protection with the law, to protect them from hate crimes and protect LGBT persons from all the violence that comes from the propaganda that has been spread by these very extreme Christian groups.
OK, Frank Mugisha in Kampala. That's where we leave it. Thanks very much for joining us. Now, in other news on the continent, the United Nations says it has evidence of the use of child soldiers and mass atrocities committed by both sides in South Sudan. Earlier today, the UN's top humanitarian official, Ivan Simonovic, called the unrest a horrifying human rights disaster. He added that mass killings and sexual violence are just some of the violations occurring in the world's youngest nation. Josh Vardy has the story.
Dire warnings from the UN over South Sudan. Its refugee agency UNHCR says the number of people displaced after fleeing the conflict could pass 100,000 by the end of January. Fighting's been intensifying between government and rebel forces at flashpoints like Bor in the centre of the country. There have been increasingly worrying reports of child soldiers and mass killings.
Many people were killed by these soldiers, rebel soldiers, belong to Riek Machar. They are killing people randomly. They are not differentiating between women and old men and small children. They are just killing people, mass killing. It's what is taking now place in Bor.
The UN says the situation can now be classed as an internal armed conflict, meaning international law over war crimes and crimes against humanity can now be applied. Both sides have allegedly been committing atrocities, causing the mass movement of refugees. Up to 50,000 have crossed the border south into Uganda, where most end up in sprawling camps like this one.
Many of them, as you know, are children and women and elderly people. And basically what is going on is that as Uganda Red Cross, we are working with the UNHCR and the Office of the Prime Minister to try to provide them basics, mainly shelter, giving them tents, preparing for them a hot meal.
The conflict in the world's youngest country has been raging since December the 15th. Aid groups say almost 10,000 people have died in the fighting.
The Central African Republic began accepting applications for a new transitional leader this Friday, 1 week after former rebel leader Michel Djotodia resigned. The National Council confirmed candidates have until Saturday morning to submit applications. Yesterday, the NTC finalised rules stating presidential hopefuls cannot be former members of the transitional government or have participated in a militia in the past 20 years. The new leader should guide the country to elections later this year, though critics question the feasibility of that timetable. Now, Madagascar has a new president-elect this Friday. The 55-year-old former finance minister was officially declared president of the Republic of Madagascar with just over 53% of the votes. While the Indian Ocean Islands' new leader has vowed to work together with his opponents to promote prosperity.
It was a long and difficult process, but all Madagascans were waiting for today. So I thank the Lord and thank the Madagascan people. It is their victory today and a victory for democracy.
Well, for more on this story, our correspondent Gael Borge is in the Madagascan capital for us.
The first sign of protest from the unfortunate candidate Robinson Jean-Louis was to boycott the ceremony of the special electoral court this morning where the results were announced. Later in the day, he called a press conference where he said he strongly contests the results and doesn't recognize the court anymore. Here is what he said.
We don't accept the defeat because we strongly condemn the final decision of the court. I won't say special electoral court anymore, but special court for this election. It's beyond belief.
Robinson Jean-Louis is convinced the special electoral court is biased and he is ready to appeal to international courts and to the African Commission of People's Rights.
Next, DR Congo's military has launched an offensive in the east of the country against a group of Islamic rebel fighters led by Ugandan commandos. ADF Nalu fighters who've been based in Congo for years are seen as a major hindrance to peace. UN experts say the 800-strong group abducted at least 80 Congolese civilians in the first half of last year. Our correspondent Lisa Vesterhoff is in Kinshasa for us.
What is announced over the past days, the Congolese army has effectively launched its attacks yesterday morning against the ADF NALU. Until now, heavy gunfire has been used to try to destroy the main bases of this group around the town of Beni, very close to the Ugandan border. And according to the army spokesperson, until now, 1 military has been killed and 1 hostage freed, but it's actually very difficult to get independent confirmed information. The new aspect today is that the Congolese army is actually starting this operation on its own without the UN intervention brigade. The United Nations force is actually still too busy trying to secure other parts of the country, around Goma, for example, where new attacks have taken place over the past days. But there's also a bit of a disagreement there. For the UN, the priority is to fight this other rebel group coming from Rwanda and composed of Hutu, some of them responsible for the genocide in Rwanda, the FDLR. So it's difficult to know how this operation will work out without the support of the United Nations.
Well, you're up to date. More from your Africa team in about 45 minutes' time. Do join us then.
High profile.
They're French and they're famous. They have one thing in common: their names are known abroad. Be they artists, entrepreneurs, or designers, their success is recognized internationally. France 24 looks back at their careers. Meet the French who influenced the world.
High profile on France 24 and France24.com.